One of the biggest things that comes up in counseling that we have to work with people on is this issue of suffering. So the question is, how do we suffer and how do we respond to suffering? And then if we learn how to respond in suffering, how do we then go and pass it on to the next person? When we go to counsel somebody else who's suffering, how do we help them along the way? So today we're going to be focusing on how to do counseling through suffering. Suffering really comes from three primary sources. And it may be three exclusive sources. And that would be our sin, the sin of other people, or the sin condition. So our sin would be the consequences of our personal disobedience to God's commands. The sin of others is the harm, betrayal, or hurt caused by other people's sinful actions. And the sin condition is what we also refer to as the curse. So that would be the brokenness of the world due to the fall, which includes tragedies like sickness, natural disasters, and accidents. So, as we get into this, let's start with the first one. Our sin and the suffering that we experience, the suffering is the consequences of our personal disobedience to God's commands. When we look at a passage like Romans 3:23, this is really clear. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. What can we learn from this passage? Well, first of all, everyone is guilty of sin. People will often say, well, why do the innocent suffer? Well, the answer is no one's innocent. Everyone is a sinner. Everyone has trespassed against God's law. We're all falling short of God's glory. And so therefore, nobody's actually innocent. And then everyone has failed to fulfill God's standard. God has a perfect standard. And if we want to be perfect, we have to live up to that standard. And it's because of our failure to live up to that standard that we are not and cannot be innocent. So when we suffer, a lot of the time, it's us doing it to ourselves. Our sin causes our own suffering. I'm sure you can think of some time in your life where you said something really stupid that was unkind, insensitive, and you hurt someone you cared about. You caused a problem in your relationship, and you created suffering. And you had to go through that because of your own sin, your own stupidity. And this happens all the time. If we look at the consequences of our personal disobedience to God's command, we can go over to Galatians 6, verses 7 and 8. This says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. The basic principle here is that if you sow beans, don't expect to grow corn. If you're sowing to the flesh, if you are living in sin, if you're celebrating sin, don't be surprised when suffering comes your way. Suffering is often the direct result of our own sin and our own sinful tendencies. And so when the suffering comes our way, we can't really complain about that. That's just God being a just God, bringing about the discipline that we need to go back to him. Next, we can look at James 1, 14 and 15. This is another example. But everyone is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. This is a concept that we've been working on with our 4-year-old a little bit. We have explained the idea of Satan and temptation to him. And at this point, he thinks anytime he sins, it's Satan's fault. Satan made me do it. And this passage is a great answer to that issue. A lot of times, like in Job's situation, Satan was tempting him to sin. However, quite often, Satan is not all present. He's not all powerful, so he can't go around tempting every single person. Most of the time when we get tempted, it's our own lust that's tempting us. It's our own selfish desires. You gonna say something?
Yes, because when I taught, was it Andrew's class? Was it Awana Leadership?
Yeah.
Or Friday night. My first class was class number 2 for him. It was the sinful lusts of the heart. It was done, and that was the class that I taught on. Was that, and it was that exact terminology. When you think Satan's tempting you, it's really not Satan tempting you, because he's not all powerful. He's not all that. It's, you realize that your own flesh, you're living outside of God's sovereignty. So you're going to do what you're wanting to do, which is what you want. So you're fighting your own thing. So they gave a good terminology, like paddling against the tide. No one really knows the own power of the lust of your heart. When you're going with the tide of sin, everything's going smoothly, because you're doing what the flesh wants. But as soon as you go, and you start living for God and doing what's right, and you start to turn that canoe around, and you start to go against what your flesh wants, then you really realize the true sinful nature of your heart, and how hard it is to paddle upstream against that current.
Yeah. Our life, our spiritual life, really does have a lot of inertia to it. It's like if you're driving forward in a car towards sin, you have to slow down, and it takes time to turn around. Sometimes you have to do a 3-point turn, and if you're not good at turning, maybe it's a 5-point turn. And then it takes a while to get up to speed going the other direction. I love that canoe illustration.
Yeah, the guy that did it, because I'm rewriting.
Yeah.
I'm taking all the classes that I take for Conquerors, and rewriting like a basic class.
Yeah.
With that stuff that you gave me.
Sure.
I haven't even got to that yet. I'm just doing the basic introduction, and that's the thing I'm on, is on the heart right now.
Yeah.
It's talking about the heart and how it pulls and makes you go back and forth. Where it's not Satan, it's what we want, why it's so hard, it's struggling. But I'm almost to the part after I get done with that, where I can go to asking for forgiveness, and then meditation. And then everything's going right good, because I got this class going, and Pastor Jeff talking about meditation. So everything's just lining up for me to collect everything and put it all together. So it's nice.
Yeah. We were discussing with Corey and Alex, because Corey has a lot of background with addiction, and he's got a lot of medical knowledge. And so we got together, and we were watching a documentary on how a lot of the addiction treatment centers are just a money-making business. They don't actually help anyone. And so we're discussing the different models of how people view addiction. And it was exactly that. I mean, when it comes down to it, it all depends on where your heart's at. Sinful addictions are just habits that come from a sinful heart. And it's hard to break a habit, but that's all it is. It's just a habit.
It's a willpower. Because I was giving the class the other day to my boys, and we were going through it, and something caught my eye in the class.
Yeah.
So I researched it when I got home, but I really couldn't find anything on it. But something else caught my eye on it, which I found that it was all secular. But I showed it to my wife, and I'm like, this is really good stuff. But I go, it's from like what you just gave us from the last, 2 weeks or 3 weeks? All secular stuff, but it had stuff that lines up with what we were going.
Yeah, so the most cutting edge research on addiction right now is all pointing toward the habit model. It's not a disease, it's not a genetic defect, it's a habit. And so they're beginning to understand that and it's really probably about 10 years old, but most street psychologists, you go to talk to a psychotherapist, or they're going to say that you have a medical condition, or you have a disease that makes you addicted, or whatever their excuse is. And the cutting edge research actually disagrees with what you'll hear from most so-called doctors.
Right.
The research is all pointing to it being just habits. And one of the worst things you can do is try and muscle through a habit. There's something that they've termed willpower fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
where if you try to enforce changing behaviors through willpower, you actually are more likely to reoffend than if you change your goals in life.
Mm-hmm.
You change your focus in life. You change your desires.
Because willpower is just, I'm gonna stop this.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't refocus to, this
Mm-hmm.
is what I should be and this is what I should do.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and the capability of willpower is a very short fuse.
Mhm.
So when you say I'm not going to do this, well, then you're thinking about it,
right.
and you only have so much willpower, and then it runs out.
Yeah.
Because you're
And then it blows up your life.
You're thinking about not doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which leads you to, you've done it for so long
Mm-hmm.
that you're thinking about, okay, I can't do that. But then you're really thinking about that one issue you shouldn't be doing, which
Mhm.
your body wants you to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, with the conqueror thing, the proverb that says, "Do not be tempted by the strange woman, but delight yourself in the wife of your youth."
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not saying have all the willpower to avoid the strange woman.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying focus on something positive to
Mhm.
redirect your energy, to redirect your focus.
Right.
And that really is how we overcome any kind of sin in life.
Mhm.
It's by focusing on something better, putting off the old man and putting
Yeah.
on the new man.
Yeah, it's redirecting, like finding, and I don't hate to use that word idle, but
Yeah.
refinding something that takes the place that is better than what you're doing.
Right. Yep. You have to put God at the center of your heart,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. So we can learn from James that we don't need any help from Satan. We have plenty of lust ourselves, although sometimes it could be satanic oppression, but quite often our own sinful lust is enough to make us go astray. Essentially, we don't do it ourselves. If we try to carry it ourselves, we're just pushing a rock uphill. But God is there. He's waiting to help us. Secondly, we've got the sin of others. So we're still on that first paragraph. So the sin of others would be the harm, betrayal, or hurt caused by other people's sinful actions. This is another source for our suffering. One example of where we can see that is in how Herod murdered all the innocent infants, babies who haven't had the chance to have the knowledge of sin, have the knowledge of God, haven't developed to be able to repent of their sin. We would say that these children would be below the age of accountability, where they haven't had the chance to choose to pursue their own lust or to pursue God. And Herod murdered all those children. Matthew 2:16 says, "Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under." This is a lot of suffering. I mean, in the entire city of Bethlehem, all of the infants were murdered. The infants suffered, the families suffered, the entire city of Bethlehem suffered. Was this because the infants had sinned? Clearly not. I mean, they hadn't had the chance to really commit any kind of sin to cause suffering in their own life. Matthew 7:58 through 60 shows another person, someone who was godly, dying because of the sin of other people. It says here that they cast him out of the city, and they stoned him, and the witnesses laid down their clothes at a young man's feet, whose name was Saul. And they stoned Stephen, while Stephen was calling on God, saying, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." So there you've got a very godly young man trying to honor God, trying to do the right thing, and even though he hadn't sinned, he hadn't done anything wrong, he was murdered for doing the right thing. This is an issue when it comes to counseling, because many immature counselors will often see suffering in someone's life and immediately go after their sin. They say, well, you're suffering because you're a sinful person. And while that's true, while they are a sinful person, that's not always the cause of their suffering. And so if you're blaming their suffering on their own sin, when it's really the sin from someone else, they're going to become callous, they're going to become hard to whatever you're trying to tell them, and you're going to lose all your leadership capital. They're going to quit listening to you because they can see that it's someone else that caused the suffering.
It was Job and his three friends.
Yeah.
Three friends were like, "You messed up, man. You were life right." And Job's like, "No, I didn't. You guys don't know what's going on."
Exactly. Yep. Our suffering can come from the brokenness of the world due to the fall, which includes tragedies like sickness, natural disasters, and accidents. These kinds of things happen to us because we live in a sin-cursed world. So sometimes it's not the result of someone else's sin against you. It's not necessarily the result of your sin. But sometimes, because we live in a fallen world, bad stuff just happens. Think of all the people who got hit by the hurricane this year. That's not necessarily judgment on some sin that they committed. It could be. But in many cases, it's just a natural disaster. It's a freak accident, and people suffer because Romans 5 verse 12, it says, "Whereas by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned." So Adam sinned, and death entered the world because of him. And then we all sin, so we are also subject to the same death that Adam was. We committed sin in the same way that Adam did, and we suffer the same consequences for our sin that Adam did. Just because we live in a sin-cursed world, bad stuff happens. And that is another source of our suffering. I've got the cross-reference here to Genesis chapter 3. Kind of breaks down where God gave this curse. Unto the woman, God said, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake, in sorrow thou shalt eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth for thee, and thou shalt eat the herb in the field. And in the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread till thou return to the ground, out of which thou wast taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." Looking through this, we can see that because of the curse, because of our sin condition, we have sorrow, we have suffering, we have to work hard to be able to eat, we have food shortages, and we have death. All of those things are suffering that results from having the sin condition. The earth is covered with thorns because Adam sinned. And living in a sin-cursed world, we're going to suffer because of that. Genesis chapter 3, we can see where there's sorrow, food scarcity, the thorns in verse 18, and then death. All of this brokenness is due to the fall, which includes the sickness and natural disasters, the accidents that we suffer from. 2 Corinthians 4, 16 and 17 shows how we will continue to suffer until we are physically resurrected. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Right now we're in that time of temporary suffering. We have the light affliction, which is but for a moment, and that's just the truth of living on this earth. We're human, we're going to suffer, and that's the reality of it. But there is coming a day when we will be redeemed from the sin condition. But for now, we suffer as a result of the curse.